There's this thing in men's work called rites of passage, and it happens pretty regularly. But the other thing I came across the other day was this thing called misogi. It's an action that is so profound that once you do it once, it shapes an entire year and can even transform your lifetime. Unfortunately, today we have very few rites of passage, which are really struggling for in society, because we built a society where men are not as strong and resilient as we used to be. And it is much different in other cultures. So you see, rites of passage are just not for men, they're for everyone, as we're going to talk about today. And so today, my guest is going to share his rise from the ashes of addiction to becoming the #1 instructor in the Firewalk ritual. Now, before we get into all that, I just want to remind everyone how hard it is for us to be men today, and nothing been more challenging. And for many of us, the pain of being a man is very real for us. It's a pain of loneliness and unworthiness, and it's masked by our anger and our resentment. It's because we are uncertain and afraid to take that next step. So if you're tired and fed up of where your life is at, then I'm going to encourage you to start your hero's quest, where you can become more, accomplish more, and live more than ever before. Just go to members.net and start your quest today. And with that, let's get on with today's episode.
The average man today is sleepwalking through life, many never reaching their true potential, let alone ever crossing the finish line to living a purposeful life. Yet the hunger still exists, albeit buried amidst his cluttered mind, misguided beliefs, and values that no longer serve him. It's time to align yourself for greatness. It's time to become a revolutionary man. Stay strong, my brother.
Welcome, everyone, to the Revolutionary Man podcast. I'm the founder of the Awakened Man movement and your host, Alan DeMonso. So let me ask you, have you ever had the experience of a rite of passage? And if so, how did it transform you? And if not, would you be willing to participate if it meant changing your life? One of the things that I see all the time in men's work and in corporations is that they're looking for an experience where their people can participate in a transformational activity. So they can use this metaphor for mastering their life's obstacles. And this experience can help them become stronger and more resilient than they ever were before. And so where does one go to find these experiences? Well, they can actually do that work. Well, that is some of what we're going to talk about today. So allow me to introduce my guest. Dave Albin is a #1 instructor in America with a 1,000-year-old ritual of passage called the Firewalk. That one that was popularized by Tony Robbins. Dave has worked for Tony for more than 20 years and started Firewalk Productions in 2014, leading hundreds of thousands of people. That's right, hundreds of thousands of people through the Firewalk, setting a world record with Tony back in London in 2005, with over 12,300 people going through it. His success has a scary and a violent past, and we're going to touch on that today. And then on June 8th in 1988, when he had finally put a gun to his head to stop the excruciating pain from both drug and alcohol addiction, he can proudly say that in 2023 will mark 35 years of sobriety. I'm so excited to have Dave on the show. Welcome to the show, Dave. How are things today, my friend?
Thanks, Alan. Thanks for having me, man. Yeah, what a turn of events there. I really lucked out in my life in so many ways because I spent a great deal of my time trying to screw it up really bad. And in spite of myself, I was able to come out the other side, and I was handed a gift of this Firewalk experience. And when I first was introduced to it, I wanted nothing to do with it. It didn't make any sense to me at all. But before I get too deep into that, let me back up and share one thing with your audience, because I like to let them know that there was a really ugly side of me, and I was able to, with help of a lot of other wonderful human beings, I was able to get out of that. And so just 2 months before I was born, my biological father, we don't know exactly what happened. All we know is that he hurt his head. He was a pilot in Korea. And to save his life, they put a plate in his head. Well, that created a tremendous amount of pain. And apparently he told my mom on many occasions that he didn't know how long he could take it. And literally 2 months before I was born, he told my mom he was going to the grocery store, and we never saw or heard from him again. So we don't know, but my mom does think that he probably took his own life. And so when I was born to a single mom. She already had 2 boys, so I was the third. We were living with my grandmother, her mother, and we had another cousin living with us as well. 1-bedroom apartment, there were 6 of us. And so My mother came from, I believe, the strongest and most courageous generation of all time. My parents and all my buddies that I grew up, parents, they came through the Great Depression. They had to face the Nazis in Germany when Hitler was trying to take over the world. When the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, the rest of the men that were in the Air Force and the Navy were over there taking care of that situation. The Army and the Marines were over in Europe, fighting that war. So what did that leave? Well, guess the women were doing when all this was happening? Everything. They did it all, man. They built Jeeps, they built trucks, they built tanks, they built rifles, they put munitions together. My mother, my biological mother, was known as Rosie the Riveter. She was working for McDonnell Douglas, and she was out on that wing, man, driving, those rivets and building airplanes. So that generation knew hard work. They knew resilience. If something broke, they fixed it. And, again, I think they were the most badass generation of our time. And so, my point of that is my mom was working hard. She was working as a server. She was working at the Roosevelt Hotel in Hollywood. And, in spite of herself and how hard she was working, it wasn't enough. There were way too many mouths to feed. And so when I was 5 years old, my biological mother went to her oldest sister, my Aunt Pat, and said, "Will you adopt David?" And her and her husband, Bob, said, "Absolutely." So they did. I'm 5 years old. Don't have a lot of memory of it. All that I know is that the next thing I know, I'm in Long Beach, California. So Bob, now my dad, right, was a highly decorated officer in World War II. He was a military officer in the Army and the National Guard. So we had a nice house. We had things. We went on a lot of trips. They took me camping all over Southern California. We went to Big Bear and Lake Arrowhead and Lake Havasu and Yosemite. I mean, it was beautiful. And my life was absolutely perfect, Alan, for 6 years after that adoption. Now, I don't know them to be anything other than my parents. I don't know they're my aunt and uncle growing up, right? Well, on the first day of summer in 1994, literally the first day, Mom came and got me out of the TV room and said, "Come in the kitchen. Your dad and I need to speak with you." Well, what I think is going to happen is they're going to tell us where we're going to go camping that particular summer, like they did all the time. And my mom looked at me and she put her hand on my arm and she, with tears in her eyes, she said, "David, what we need to tell you is we're not your parents." Okay, well, I'm 11. What does that mean? What do you? That's like, the analogy I use is like going outside and looking at the sky and it's as blue as could be, and they're trying to tell you the sky's not blue. Well, it looks pretty darn blue to me. Looks like you've been my parents to me. And so they even went on to tell me that, your Aunt Dean, yeah, well, she's actually your mother. And I remember at the time thinking, I don't even like her. And the reason I didn't like her is when she was around me, she wanted to maul me, right? She wanted to sit next to me and hold me and kiss me and hug me and all that. And well, duh, I'm her son. But at the time, I didn't know that, right? So it was just, it wasn't awkward. It was just like, you know how you are when, boys, when we're that age, we don't want to be kissed by, our aunt or whatever. Right. So anyway, yeah, there you go. Yeah. Get away, cooties, whatever. I don't know. Anyway, it was never inappropriate. It was just all, when she got a time, when she had a moment to be around me, she took it. And so, that was just the way it was with her. Well, shortly after they told me this, both Bob and Pat started drinking. Now, they had sworn off alcohol when I was 5 when they adopted me. And now here we are 6 years later, and they both started drinking at the same time. And it got ugly real fast. I can tell you that. Alcohol doesn't screw around. It starts screwing up people's lives really fast. My mom was kind of a playful, funny, kind of cheerful drunk, if you will, where Bob, not so much. He was not a nice guy when he drank at all. He was vicious. And so one day they went to the grocery store. Now, back in the 60s, you could do that, right? You could leave your kids home. Nobody cared. It was all good. Nobody was going to, all the neighbors did it, right? In fact, you'd call the neighbor across the street and say, "Hey, Joanne, Bob and I are going to the grocery store. David's going to be home. If he needs anything, he can come knock on the door," right? "Yeah, of course. Sure. Send him over now. I'll cook him a fried bologna sandwich." Of course, anybody that grew up in the 60s, yeah, bologna sandwich is all about, right? So sure enough, they went to the store and then I was looking at it, man. I know where the booze is. They were hiding it in plain sight. And I went over and I opened up that cabinet and I pulled out that bottle and I set it down on the table and I looked at it and I poured about a half cup of that. It was brandy into a coffee cup. Boom, down it went. And Alan, I never had a chance ever. I truly believe I was an alcoholic right on the spot. I started acting out. I wanted more. I mean, it was like pouring rocket fuel into me. And there was a lot of alcoholism in my family anyway, and I was no exception. I lined right up for it. So that just progressed from there. And it's kind of moving forward. By the time I was a junior in high school, they brought me into the principal's office one day and said, Albin, out. We're done with you. You're out of here. Now, I didn't care. I was good. I did not think that anything that I was learning in high school was going to aid me in how I made money or I took care of myself in my life. I didn't believe that. In fact, it was a Paul Simon song back in those days. And one of the lyrics was, when I think back of all the crap I learned in high school, it's a wonder I can think at all. Well, that was like my theme song, right? So it was like, and I went and got a job in the biggest grocery store in the state of California. Now, by the time I was there, I already had an entrepreneurial spirit about me. When about the same time that they both started drinking, Pat would grow flowers in the backyard. And she had a green thumb. They were beautiful. And there was 1,000 flowers in our backyard, which she'd go cut them, and she knew how to arrange them, really make beautiful bouquets. And she'd put a little twist tie around them. And when she cut the flower, she cut it at an angle. She wouldn't cut it at the bottom. She cut it at an angle. And what that did is it opened up the surface area so more water would get in the flower. They'd last longer. Then when she'd put them in a bucket to send me out on the street corner to sell them, she put a little bit of 7-Up in that water. And I'll be darned if them darn flowers didn't outlast the florist 2-1. And something happens. I don't know what it is to this day. I still do it. If I go down and get flowers today, I bring them home. I cut them and I put them in a vase and I put water and I put a little bit of 7-Up in it. And guess what? They'll last for 2 weeks. So yeah, so there I was. I was learning how to negotiate with adults. They would buy my flowers. Shortly after that, I got a paper route. Now, when you get a paper route, you better be an entrepreneur because it's your business, man. You got to do it. It's 7 days a week. Yeah. You got to go to a location. You got to pick up your papers. You got to fold them, put a rubber band on them, load them into your saddlebags, put them on your bike, drive your route, and deliver them, man. And if you did a good job when you delivered them, guess what they do when you came by to collect the money? They tip you. Yeah. So, you learn, right? And I also lived across the street from a golf course. And I love that. And here's one of the things I learned about golfers at a really young age. They suck. They're horrible, right? And so I would ride the perimeter of the golf course on my Stingray bicycle. And guess what I'd find? Golf balls everywhere, right? And I also knew in the places like right-handers, if it was a dog-leg left, there was this one hole, the 9th hole, it was a dog-leg left going back into the clubhouse. Well, a right-hander, if they had a slice, boop, over the fence it went, boop, boop. And so I took the balls home, I'd clean them, I'd go back to the golf course, and in the trash, they had the boxes that the golf balls come in. Well, I'd take those out of the trash and go home and clean the balls and put them in those trays, and then I'd organize them. Titleist, Max Fly, Dunlop, Wilson's, right? And then I'd go back into the parking lot of the golf course and sell them back to the golfers, right? So here's what I learned at a really young age. There's money out there. Go get it. Good things come for those who hustle, right? Absolutely. And so that was, I had that gift, if you will. But things got worse, right? From alcohol, I went to drugs, and I got heavy, heroin, cocaine, lots of it. And a couple of marriages later, I'm in my 3rd marriage. I'll move this. You mentioned June 8th of 88. Yeah. So when I woke up that morning, I'm in the basement, and I married a woman who had 3 kids, or my stepkids. They're living upstairs. They want to stay away from me because I'm pretty bad at this point. And when I woke up on that morning, I said, "That's it. I'm done. I'm out. I'm not doing this anymore. This is way, way, way too emotionally painful and physically painful. This is real easy. Lock and load. Put it in my mouth. Boom. Pull the trigger." Well, as I'm wrestling with that, it dawns on me. Hold on a second, pal. You pull that trigger and yeah, maybe your troubles are over, but those 3 kids that you agreed to be their stepfather, you're going to ruin their life. Oh, you can't do that. Got to find another way, pal. Got to figure out to do something else because you can't kill yourself. because, everybody around you kill everybody around you when you do that, right? We all know that. And so that was what's going through my head. Well, the next thought I had was call Alcoholics Anonymous. Well, the interesting thing about that, Alan, was I didn't know who the hell Alcoholics Anonymous was. I'd never been to an AA meeting. I didn't know anybody in AA. And yet there's the thought, call Alcoholics Anonymous. So I did. And I got this wonderful human being on the phone. And this woman saved my life. And I affectionately nicknamed her Madge. And the reason I did that is because she talked like this. She probably smoked 2 packs of Pall Mall non-filters a day, right? Well, she was the gatekeeper, all right? So it's her job to interview you. And if she thinks it's warranted, then she'll call somebody to come over and pick you up and take you to an AA meeting. Well, apparently I passed the test. She called a guy by the name of Lauren. Lauren came over, took me to an AA meeting, an all men's group. And that's when it started. I got a really big heaping dose of AA that day, 4 meetings, 12:30, 4:30, 6:30, and 8:30. And when I was there, they took a big book of Alcoholics Anonymous and they opened it up to the front cover and they all wrote their name there and their phone number. And it said, before you take that first drink, call one of us. Interesting. They put their first name and their phone number and they handed that to me and sent me home with it. At the same time, they sent me home in one of these, little chip. And it said 24 hours, the Serenity trip, right? And so, the next day I went to an AA meeting again. And then I got a week. And then I got a month. They gave me another one. And then 2 months, they gave me another one. 3 months, they gave me another one. 6 months, they gave me another one. And 9 months, they gave me another one. And at 1 year, I got the 1-year chip. And as you said, this last June 8th of this year, I've been clean and sober for 35 years. Now, here's where how I kind of took the path to go into the personal development route. When I was getting sober, I had insomnia. So I was up late at night all the time. My sleep patterns were all over the place. Now, remember, I'm coming off heroin, I'm coming off cocaine, and I'm coming off alcohol. And I can tell you, it's not a fun ride. It doesn't look anything like something fun. I can tell you that. I've literally had people tell me that. Clinical psychologist told me one time, he said, I don't know if you know this or not, but the chances of you making it out with having to deal with all 3 of those is astronomical. And I said, Doc, that's great. Don't tell me the odds. I don't want to know. But I knew what she was talking about. And so, yeah, there he was one night, 3 o'clock in the morning, Mr. Motivation, a young Tony Robbins. There he is, selling Gunthy Ranker, selling his program called Personal Power. It's a 30-day program. And you know what, Ellen, I couldn't stand him. I thought, what a pompous ass this guy is, man. I don't like this guy at all. He's all motivated, he's all enthusiastic. And I'm not motivated. I'm not enthusiastic. I'm hurting bad, right? But he said a couple things that kept me listening and kept me in the game. The one thing he said was, we'll do more to avoid pain than we will to gain pleasure. And I went, okay. Yeah, I get that. Sure. Because I'm drinking and drugging, and guess what I'm chasing or running away from? Pain and pleasure, right? And so, but the one that really got me, he said, the driving force in our life, how we make decisions, we do it out of inspiration or desperation. And I went, oh my gosh, he nailed me. And so I bought his program. And they sent it to me, came in a big box. And it came on these little white things called cassette tapes. Right? Your audience is going to go, what are cassette tapes? They're in the Smithsonian. They're right next to 8-track tapes and reel to reel.
8-tracks. I was just thinking of the 8-track.
Right? And so, yeah, man, I plugged them in, did what the man taught me to do. And guess what? It worked. I started making major changes. I was in a really bad marriage, so I had to start planning my exit strategy. I was overweight, so I started working out. I lost a bunch of weight, and my attitude was changing. I started a new business. I started a chauffeur school in DC because at the time I was selling limousines. And so I thought, wow, sell limousines, start a chauffeur school, you can graduate. It made a lot of sense, right? Back to my entrepreneurial, mindset. And yeah, man, and it just went from there, right? Well, one of my buddies in AA came to me one day and he said, hey, man, what's going on with you? There's something going, and I kind of like it, man. You seem really enthusiastic. I like how you look, your new business, because what are you doing? And I said, well, I'm listening to this guy named Tony Robbins. And he goes, Tony Robbins? I know who Tony Robbins is. I bought his book, but I never read it. And I went, well, how often does that show up in your life? Right? And I said, look, I've got his program. I've got his on cassettes, 30 days. I'll loan it to you if you promise me you'll listen to it. He said, absolutely. So I did. There you go, dude. Well, he did the same thing. He went through it and worked it. Well, 7 years later, by the way, this is all happening in 1988, right, with the whole being introduced to Robbins. Well, 7 years later, in 1995, my phone rings, right? And it's my buddy Dan. He's like, hey, man, did you know that I wanted to call you, man, and let you know, did you know Tony Robbins is coming to town? I'm like, no, I had no idea. And he goes, dude, come on, you gotta go with me. You got me into this, right? And I said, well, when is it? I said, can you go? Yeah, I can go. Let's do it. He goes, fantastic. I'll call you right back. So he calls me back like an hour later, and he gets me on the phone, and he goes, done. We pick up the tickets at will call, and here's what they told us to do. Number one, drink a lot of water. You've got to stay hydrated. Really important. Okay, we'll drink a lot of water. What else? Bring snacks. And the reason for that is you're going to spend a lot of time in the room, which anybody out there that's ever been to a Tony Robbins seminar, they know why I'm laughing. Because, yeah, believe me, you're going to spend a lot of time in the room. And then he said, be ready to play full out and bring a good attitude. Absolutely. How much did the ticket cost? $695. What? What are you kidding me? This is in 1995.
Yeah.
So what's $700 worth now today? Like 1.3 million? I don't know. Right? Buy Bitcoin. That's all I know. And I said, don't worry, Dan, for $695, I'll play full out. Well, he's getting ready to get off the phone, right? He goes, oh, wait, stop, hold it. I forgot to tell you the most important part. We're going to be doing a firewalk. And I remember thinking, oh, hell no. No. We're not doing that. That's not going to happen. Well, I'm not saying any of this. I'm verbalizing it in my head, right? And by the way, what's a firewalk? I don't know. I have no idea. I'd never heard that term until that moment. But I'm saying no to it. I can tell you that. And so I'm just going, yeah, sure, Dan, no problem. All right, cool, man. See you then. Well, the big day comes, and we get there, and Tony takes the stage at 2:00 in the afternoon. And the next thing I know, it's after midnight. We 30 people at this event. I've been in a room. We've all been in a room with Tony Robbins for 10 hours. And remember, bring snacks or you'll starve to death. Yeah, those snacks came in handy. And all of a sudden, it's after midnight. And all of a sudden, Tony goes, take your shoes off. And I'm like, oh, no. I see where you're going with that, pal. I'm not falling for that. Ain't going to happen. And so, but I'm with 3,500 people. And guess what they're doing? They're taking their shoes off. And I'm thinking, people, no, you're being tricked. Don't go towards the light. It's like, oh my gosh. So now I've got a dilemma. What am I going to do? They're taking their shoes off. What am I going to do? Walk out into this big parking lot where they do the firewalk with my shoes on when everybody else took their shoes off? Nah, I ain't going to do that. I'm going to get judged like crazy. So I'm like, just calm down, relax. It's going to be okay. Take your shoes off. And when you get out there, go in the back and hide out. No one is going to know, period. Right? That's my strategy. Well, it gets worse. When Tony's got you walking out there, he gets everybody to start clapping and chanting. Right? So they're walking out, everybody's going, yes, yes, yes. I'm walking out there, Alan, going, no, ain't going to happen. Well, it gets worse. When you get out there, right, out where the Firewalk area is, he's got African drummers. Oh, come on. Dun, 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 dun. What a dog and pony show, right? Well, over in the corner of this big giant parking lot where they facilitate the Firewalk, there's a giant fire. It's huge. It's 30 feet wide and it's every bit of 70 feet long. And they've been feeding it wood all day. Just cords and cords and cords and cords of wood. Well, after 10 hours of burning, it renders. So you've got this big, giant, beautiful blue flame of coals. It's gorgeous, right? So how do you firewalk 3,500 people? Well, you take a whole bunch of wheelbarrows over to that big pit. You load them in wheelbarrows. They shovel it in wheelbarrows, and they take a wheelbarrow and they pull it in between two lanes of sod, of grass, a fire lane. That fire lane's 3 feet wide, 18 feet long. And then they just take a flathead shovel and they sprinkle those coals on top of that grass, and that's what you walk on. Well, I'm not doing it. I'm hiding in the back. Well, here's the problem. Tony Robbins knows, he did his research, he knows that the Firewalk is a 1,000-year-old rite of passage experience. It is literally probably the most powerful experience any human can go through. And he knows that. He knows it's going to create a paradigm shift. He knows it's going to change your life. So he wants to make sure everybody participates, right? But he knows there's people like me. and he knows where we are. So what does he do? Son of a, you know what? He trains people to come find you.
Yep.
Here he comes. I'm hiding out in the back. Here comes this dude, man. And what's interesting about this guy, Alan, without this guy, I'm not here right now. I'm, I've firewalked tens of thousands of people. My whole life changed, everything. But without this guy, it doesn't happen, because he walks up to me, gets 20 feet from me, and he looks at me kind of weird, like there's something wrong with me, or like a dog when it hears a funny noise, right? And he goes, "Hey, man, are you okay?" And when we're not okay, what do? We lie, right? "Oh, I'm good, man. All good here, man. Sure, nothing to see. Move along," right? And all of a sudden he says, "So, hey, man, are you going to walk tonight?" And I'm like, "Absolutely not. No way am I going to walk tonight." And he goes, "Hey, man," he's like, "that's cool. No problem. We don't want you to do anything you don't want to do." And I'm like, "Oh, okay. I like this guy. Going to get me out of here." No. he says, "Well, listen, man, can I ask you something? I mean, wouldn't you at least like to watch?" And I went, "Well, yeah, sure. Let's do that. Let's watch these people burn their feet off. That'll be entertaining." And he goes, "Well, hey, man, look where you are. You can't see anything from way back here. You're 100 yards away." He's telling the truth. I got 3,500 people standing in front of me. I can't see anything. Here's what I can hear. Yes, yes. Dun, 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 dun. And then people are already walking and they're celebrating, right? So when they get to the celebration and after they walk, they're screaming and yelling and jumping up and down. And it's, again, man, there's nothing like it. I've never been to anything like this other than a Tony Robbins seminar. So I'm like, all right, so I'll get in line. So I get in line, right? And I'm just kind of walking along, and I'm walking along, and all of a sudden this guy comes up to me. And he whispers in my ear, and he said, "He knows when you're ready. When he says go, you go." And this guy just disappeared into the night. And I'm like, what was that? What do you mean he knows when you're ready? What? So now I'm walking along, and I'm kind of trudging along, right? And I still can't see anything from me. I got 1,000 people in front of me, can't see anything, but I can see it. I get to a point where I can see it at an angle. And Alan, they're doing it, man. These people are walking on hot coals. Every race, every creed, every color, they're doing it. And so now I can't take my eyes off it. It's mesmerizing, right? It's like, seeing a car accident, right? And you're not supposed to stare at or look at it, but you stare at it anyway. Well, that's what's going on. I'm in a trance, and I'm just staring. I'm walking. All of a sudden, boom! Guess where I am?
Right,
I'm at the front of the line. And so now I'm looking down. That fire lane's 3 feet wide, 18 feet long, and those coals are bright red. You can see it visually, man. And there's a wheelbarrow there too, and you can feel the heat coming off. So it's real. And I'm staring into the abyss. My heart's beating so hard, it's going to jump out of my chest any minute. Well, there's a trainer standing right there, and he's watching me, right? And all of a sudden he goes, "Eyes up." And I'm like, oh, shoot, like startled me, right? So now my eyes are up. Well, when I was in the room with Tony for 10 hours, guess what he teaches you to do? Keep your eyes up.
Yeah. Don't
stare at what you fear. Look to the celebration end. So now my eyes are up, and the trainer goes, "Squish your fist and say yes." And I went, "Yes." And he went, "Stronger." And I went, "Yes." Well, he could tell. He's a trainer. He knew. He could see I wasn't in a peak state. And so he screamed at me, got like right in my face and screamed at me, "Stronger." And I threw my hands in the air and I screamed as loud as I could. And he goes, "Go, go, go." Boom. I took off, right? Remember the guy? He knows when you're ready. When he says go, you go. I went. And here's the first thing I learned about Firewalking. I think everybody learns the same lesson when they do it. When you take the first step, you'll take the second, third, fourth, and fifth. I guarantee you. Right? You're not going to walk halfway out there and stop. I guarantee you that. And so Tony positions a couple of guys at the end, right? And they lock their arms and they catch you. And they catch you and they go, "Stop, wipe your feet and celebrate." And I'm wiping my feet and I'm celebrating. And all of a sudden it dawns on me, oh my gosh, I've burnt myself really, really bad. And so I look at my foot. It's dirty, but there's no burns. Oh, it's my other foot. Same thing. Real dirty, no burns. And so now I'm feeling one of the most exhilarating moments of my entire life ever. And I'm down there with 3,500 people that are all doing the same thing. They're celebrating it. They're screaming. They're yelling. The excitement level is off the chain, because all of us, our self-confidence, our self-belief, and our self-worth all got raised up together at the same time. And so our frequency collectively all raised, right? So I'm like, "Hey, where's the bus? Let's go climb Everest, people. Let's go," right? I mean, at that moment, you think you could do anything, literally. Well, here's where it gets really interesting, though, the next day. So this is a 4-day event. that was day one, the night of. Now we're going into day two. So we're in the foyer and we're 3,500 people. Best I could tell, everybody was on time too. Pretty amazing. And I've never seen or witnessed anything like that in my life. I'm sitting here watching these people and I'm watching how they're communicating. They're laughing. Some of them are crying. They're hugging. They're high-fiving. I mean, the energy that morning was intense. Again, I'd never seen or witnessed anything like that in my life, humanistically, the way people were getting along. And I'm like, so did we drink the Kool-Aid last night? Yeah, I'm pretty sure we all drank the Kool-Aid last night. And that's exactly what Tony wants, right? He's got you now where your brain is going, okay, I walked on coals last night. There were 1,000 degrees. I didn't burn myself. What else can I do? Let's go into day two, Tony. Here we go. And so later in the event, I met one of Tony's trainers, a guy by the name of Ted Macy. I love this guy. He's such a beautiful human. Him and his wife, Mary Macy. And I'm talking to Ted, really cool guy. And I'm like, so dude, you get to come and play in this environment on a regular basis, don't you? He goes, oh yeah, I get to do this 10, 12 times a year. And I go, oh my God, that must be so, I mean, how encouraging to be in an environment like this and keep yourself motivated and inspired. He goes, oh yeah, absolutely. And he goes, as a matter of fact, he goes, see those people standing over there with the black shirts and the pink writing on the back? Yeah. He goes, dude, they're volunteers. They're just like you. They were here, a couple of events ago and decided to volunteer and come back and help out and put themselves in the environment. He said, so look, man, you want to be in this environment? Go home, call Robbins Research. They'll send you a volunteer crew application, fill it out, send it back. Who knows? Well, I did. I sent it back, and 9 weeks later, I got a letter in the mail. And it said, Dave Albin, congratulations. You've been selected to crew with the Tony Robbins companies in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Well, here we go. My foot's in the door. Now, when they look at your application, they're looking at what your qualifications are, right? So I had a military background. I had a security background. So they immediately put me on the security team to help take care of Tony's celebrities, which was, I mean, we could do a whole podcast on that alone, right? And then because I lived on a farm and I knew how to use tools and equipment and log splitters and hatchets and things of this nature, they put me on the fire building team, which is exactly what I wanted. And so that was all happening in 95, 90. And so I crewed like 5 or 6 times. Now you got to pay your way as a volunteer, right? So you got to pay your airfare, your hotel, your travel, your expenses, all of it. Well, hell, I'm spending $1,500 or more every time I'm going. And my wife's like this. Who's Tony Robbins? She doesn't know anything. She's never been. She didn't know, right? She had no references. And I'm spending $1,500 and she didn't like it. And she was right. She was absolutely right. Well, something happened that changed my life forever. They hired me as a subcontractor. And so they paid my way. They offered me a job, kind of a thing, as an independent contractor. And they paid my way. So they paid my airfare, my hotel, per diem, and they paid me, a couple $100 per event. So I went from being in the red every time to being in the black, right? They did another smart thing. They gave me a free ticket. And so I gave it to my wife. And my next event that I crewed or that I got hired as a subcontractor, she got to go with me. And so she went through the event, did the whole thing. The night after she graduated, we were walking on the beach at 1 o'clock in the morning. And she looked at me and she goes, I get it. Okay, I drank the Kool-Aid. I get it. You want to run with this dude? He's pretty badass. Go ahead. You've got my blessing. And so that's how that went down. So that was all happening in 95, 96, 97. And then in 2003, Tony offered me the captain's position, which meant that I'd be in charge of all of Tony's Firewalks globally. And at first I said, I can't. And they said, why? And I said, I homeschool my kids. And they said, oh, okay, well, what if we paid to have your family travel with us? Would that make a difference? You think? So here I'm homeschooling my kids. And the next thing they know, and my wife, they're on the road with their dad and their husband on tour with Tony Robbins. In fact, the first time my kids firewalked, my daughter was 6 years old and my son was 9 years old. So that all went down in 2002, 2003. I think you read there in the early notes there that in 2005, we went to London. We went to the Excel Center there on the eastern side of London and to the Docklands. And we did the biggest firework in our planet's history. We firewalked 12,300 people. Now, I want to disclose, I say it's a world record. However, Guinness Book of World Records was not there. However, To my knowledge, there's never been a firewalk with 12,300 people. And the only thing that comes even close to that is another Tony Robbins seminar where we walked, 10,000 or 9,000, whatever. And so that all went down. And then in 2014, I'm cruising along, everything's great. And my phone rings and it's a company called Google. And Google's calling me wanting to know, are you the Dave Albin that does the firewalks for Tony Robbins? Yeah. What can I do for you? Well, if you're not under any contractual obligation or non-compete, we'd like to talk to you about hiring you. And I'm like, well, homeboy's a free agent. What you got? And they said, well, we have 148 executives graduating. They've been in a 9-month curriculum. We want to create a really powerful experience for that graduation. Get it? What does Google know that a lot of us don't? They wanted to create a really powerful experience, life-changing paradigm experience for that graduating class of 148 executives. So originally, when we were talking, they wanted to do the firewalk, but they wanted to do it during the day. And I said, can't do it during the day. It's a safety issue. I won't do it. So, they were going to graduate, have lunch, and then wanted to do the firewalk. And I'm like, no, man, we can't do that. Tell you what we could do. We could do a glass walk. They're like, a glass walk? You mean like walking on broken glass? Yes, sir. And they said, ooh, tell us about that. And so that's what we ultimately ended up doing with my first hire from Google. Went back the following year, did it again. I got to meet one of the executives. She pulled me aside one day and she said, hey, David, look, I just want to share something with you. You're at the top of your game, man. Corporate America will eat you alive. They're starving for experiences like this that you can facilitate. These are life-changing paradigm shift experiences, man. And you're at the top of the game. So, I'm not telling you what to do, but you may want to think about starting your own business. This was in 2014. And so if Google tells you how to start your own business because of the numbers, I thought, maybe I should listen to these guys. Yeah. So yeah, man, there we were, 2014, Firewalk Productions was born. And shortly after that, I was at NASA, and then I was at Notre Dame, and then we went to Virginia Tech, and then Remax and Chick-fil-A and Microsoft and Heineken and YMCA, the EO organization, high schools. I mean, everybody and their brother were reaching out to me to come create, this paradigm shift, life-changing experiences. And, the bottom line, Alan, is we've been going hot and heavy ever since. No pun intended.
What an incredible story and what an incredible journey, Dave. There's just the thinking and listening to from where you came from, as we talked about, really rising from the ashes, that truly that Phoenix experience. And I just think what was really incredible in reading about your story and that was hearing, and thank you for bringing up about your children, like at 6 and 9, I wouldn't have considered that. And I just wondered, now they're a little bit older, how has that experience shaped their lives?
If you met my kids right now, you go, yep, okay, that's Dave Albin's kids. Look at them. My daughter has 2 kids, my grandkids. Caden is 6 and she's about 7 months old now. Got an amazing man in her life who works his tail off. He's really, really good at his chosen profession. In fact, he does so well that she's a stay-at-home mom. They live in Granbury, Texas, about an hour from Dallas. My son went on to become a computer engineer. He put himself through community college, paid for everything. He was working, so he had no student debt. And then he went on to App State University. That's where I live, by the way. I live up in the Appalachian Mountains in the northwestern part of the state of North Carolina. And I'm 20, 25 minutes west of Boone, which is where App State is. So they still live in Boone. He's got his dream job, works for a really phenomenal company. His fiance also has a really great job. She's remote. And so he's got they have an amazing, amazing life. And so when you expose your kids to that kind of environment and that kind of motivation and inspiration, it's going to rub off. Now, I'm not saying they haven't had their troubles. They have. But the beauty is that they work through them. And so, they were in that environment. And by the way, Tony Robbins treated my family like gold. He was so beautiful and warm and loving, him and his wife, Sage, to my family and to my kids. And I'll be forever grateful to them for that. But yeah, they're doing absolutely phenomenally well.
Yeah, great to hear that. Great to hear that. We were also talking just before coming on the show today about really pivoting your business a little bit now too. And so I was really inspired by how you've started to pivot. And there's another group of individuals that this is really important to. And I really like you to share that story again with our audience, man.
Yeah. Thanks for letting me share that part. It's really important. So, I created my own firewalk. It's different than Tony's. What I did was I also added another experience to it. I brought in the board break experience. So what I did with that is, it's a martial arts thing, right? If you go to any dojo in America, if you graduate in a belt, typically you're going to break a board, right? You're going to break it with your hand or your elbow or your knee or your foot or whatever. And then you graduate, you get your new belt, right? So it's very, very, very well known throughout the martial arts community. So I took that, brought it into my experience, but I did something completely different with it. What I did is I have them write something on front of that board they want to move towards. I have them write something on the back of the board they need to move away from. And then I had them write anybody's name on the board you're in conflict with. And what I mean by that is that if forgiveness and reconciliation is part of that relationship, it ends tonight. Stop carrying around a resentment about another human being. It's going to take away from you. It's going to end tonight. Give it to the fire. And then to create the rite of passage that we've been talking about, I have them write anybody's name on the board that they've lost. And so that opens up ancestral, whatever. So we take them outside. We have the board break stations. We take them through. They break the board. They set the board down. We walk them counterclockwise. We firewalk them. They come back to get their board. They throw their board in the fire. And then here's where the real magic comes in, is after the board break and after the firewalk, I put them in a circle and I do what's called the Ho'oponopono heart hug. And what I do is I have everybody hug, and I have them hug the opposite way so that my heart is on their heart, right? So typically we hug this way. Well, it goes the opposite way. I have them close their eyes, and then I have them take 3 deep diaphragmatic breaths. And so they take a nice deep breath in, and I have them hold it, exhale. Now do one more, nice deep breath in. So I'm oxygenating their body. Well, when 2 hearts are that close to each other, guess what they do? They're just like clocks, right? They calibrate. They start beating at the same time. So now I've done 3 cleansing breaths. And so I do that maybe 5, 6 times, whatever. And the next thing you know, that entire group hearts are beating at the same time. And so that's kind of my own little superpower, if you will, right? So now you got a group of people, their hearts are beating together. They just firewalk, they board break, they completely change their life. The paradigm shift is there. And so here's where I'm going with that process now. A couple of months ago, I was on a podcast, and Natalia got me, after the podcast, we were just talking. And she said, "Hey, have you ever done a firewalk for veterans?" And I said, "No. I mean, vets have been there, right? I'm a vet, and my guys some people around me are vets, but I've never specifically done it for vets." She goes, "Man, you need to do that." And I got an opportunity for you to possibly do that. So as we started talking about it, we talked about the suicide rate. You can't talk about vets we can't ignore that, right? 22 a day is what they say out there. That's not true. That's only if they leave a note. If they don't leave a note, the numbers are up around 40. 40 men and women a day are taking their own lives. I can't deal with that. Not knowing how to change someone's life. So why is that happening? Why are these men and women coming home and taking their own lives? It's pretty simple. When they're over there, they're together as a unit, right? They're moving, they're protecting, I'm looking here, he's looking there. I mean, it's just the way it works. And who knows what you're going to see when you go over there. You're going to see one of your buddies get their brains blown out. I mean, who knows, man? It's ugly. It's war. It's not pretty. And so they move together as a team, like, just like when you put them in a heart hug, right? And so then they come home, and what happens? They lose touch. They're fragmented. Now, all these people that you were sleeping with next to each other, keeping each other alive, and now you're not even within proximity. So what happens? Their purpose starts to drop. Depression sets in. They reach for alcohol or drug. Then the depression gets worse. Drink, boom, boom. Next thing you know, they're a casualty of one of those numbers. And so what my idea is, so by the way, after Natalia talked to me about this, that next night when I woke up in the middle of the night and it was as clear as could be. And so we're going to call it Operation Do No Harm. And here's how it's going to work. I'm going to bring the vets in, and I'm going to do something to them. I'm going to trick them. You betcha. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to have them take an oath. And they're going to have to promise to do no harm. Now, when somebody in the military takes an oath, they'll stand up to it, right? They know when they went in, they had to say their general orders. They had to swear in. They had to take an oath. They had to do all that. So I'm going to have them do that. They're going to have to promise to do no harm to themselves or anybody else. Now, we're going to give them one of these. We're going to give them a chip that says Operation Do No Harm. Put it in your hand. I want you to squeeze it as hard as you can. Feel the pain. And that's just a little bit of the pain that's going to happen to your family if you take your own life. So if you ever need a reminder, reach in your pocket. It's right there. Then, in addition to that, they'll probably get one of these, a necklace, right, with the little flaming feet, like, my logo over here, right? Yeah. And then also they're going to go home with one of these. These are the coals from the firewalk, right? So they'll have these. I could set this on their desk or their credenza or whatever, and they can look at it every single day. Now, one of my companies that I love, that when you're going to do a firewalk, you have to light the fire, right? Well, I light it with one of these, a Zippo lighter, right? Out of Bradford, Pennsylvania. There they are. Like, there's mine, right? It's got the flaming feet on it. Well, I went to Zippo. I said, hey, guys, I love you. I need your help. They said, what can I do for you, Dave? I said, we want to do this thing with veterans. And I'd love for you to design a lighter for them. And they said, oh, yeah, come on. So I went up there for 2.5 days, sit down with the design team, and here's what they're going to do. They're going to design a 1941 replica, just like the lighters that my dad carried in World War II. Because Zippo gave out lighters during the war, right? So the GIs could remember something or have something from home, which is really powerful. And so they're going to take the 1941 replica, they're going to powder coat it black. And because they're silver lighters, like stainless steel, right? They're going to laser do no harm. And they are going to look gorgeous. So we're going to give that to the vet. And then we're going to get them within that oath. They're going to have to promise to go tell their fellow men and women who are vets to bring them into this community so that we can get them all through that experience. So, and then I added 3 other categories. Yes, we got vets. First responders have a high suicide rate as well.
Sure do. Unfortunately.
And so we're gonna include them as well. We'll probably do something. We could probably include the first responders and the vets if we did it. Like we just booked our first event to do this in Modesto, California. And we're probably going to have somewhere in the area of 100 to 200, maybe 300. And that might be a mixture, right? It might be a mixture of some first responders and some vets, and we're good with that part. The other 2, though, that we're going to do is kids that have been bullied, and then single moms, which is a big part of my life, right? Because my mom was a single mom. My daughter was a single mom for a while. And so that's got, it's got a really big place in my heart. So the cool thing from my perspective is we got it figured out. So if a company's out there and they go, ooh, man, let's get our brand out in front of that. It's going to make you look good. And it's going to make you feel good because we're saving their lives. And so any company that wants to come forward and talk to us about, we'd love to enter into some discussions with you.
Man, what a great way to transition that and helping such important people in our lives, right? Our military, those first responders, yes, single moms and everyone that you're doing this for. And I think that's why, even though this is a show about men, we all have mothers, right? Yes, we have wives in our lives, right? We may have daughters who we're raising. Rites of passage are so important for all of us.
Yes. And we've lost it. It's not around anymore, right?
No.
It's like, where's the rite of passage anymore? So that's another thing. That's why we wanted to add kids that have been bullied, to the equation as well. So we're going to move force. We're going to be a force for good, and we're going to change people's lives. We're going to save a bunch of lives. And, I'm not arrogant enough to think that I can save all of them, but you know what? I can save some of them. That's for sure.
And you sure will. A couple of closing questions here. One I wanted to ask you, what's been the best piece of advice that you've been given, and how has that served you in your life?
I love that question. This too shall pass, right? Things going bad, things falling apart, everything's going to hell in a handbasket. Guess what? This too shall pass. Everything going great, everything's wonderful. You got the world by the you-know-what? This too shall pass, right? I think for me too, one of the things I got from Tony is state management. Managing your state, remaining yourself disciplined to your rituals. And, like I get asked all the time, so Dave, when you get up in the morning, what's the first thing you do? I make my bed. What's the second thing you do? I take a cold shower, and then I start my routine, right? I'll read 10 pages in a good book. I fill my body with with water. I live up here in the Appalachian Mountains. And one of the reasons I chose the cabin that I live in is because the water coming into my house is mountain water. It's alive. And when people come here, they're like, oh my gosh, your water tastes so good. I have friends who come over here. They literally come, they bring five gallon, or they bring gallon jugs and take water back with them when they go back, down the mountain. So yeah, you get into just, I say this, I say all the time, stop looking for heroes and be one. That's really it. Because here's what I found in my life. If you help enough people get what they want, you'll always get what you want. It's a universal code. And I learned it in AA too, right? Because in AA, you got the 12 steps, you got the 12 traditions, and right there in the middle, you got what's called the preamble. And the preamble says, when anyone anywhere reaches out, I want the hand of AA to be there. And for that, I'm responsible. And I took that real serious. And so, I'm all about, helping people, and it feels good. It feels magnificent. And when you do it the right way, they'll even pay you pretty well to do it.
That's outstanding. Yeah. So just for us to close out for today, of everything we spoke about today, maybe we didn't get a chance to touch on something. What would be the one takeaway you'd want everyone to have with us?
Get clear about who you are and what you want. And don't lie to yourself. I think Viktor Frankl left us, one of the greatest mindsets that any humans ever walked the planet, right? His book, Man's Search for Meaning. If you're not familiar with the book, read it. It's not a fun read. It's not an easy read, but it is a life-changing book that will change your perspective about your life and who you are and what you're doing, and finding and getting a grip on forgiveness and gratitude. Boom. Those two together are powerful. And so Viktor Frankl, when he was there, if you don't know, I'll tell a little bit of it. He was in Auschwitz, right? And so they assassinated his family. They killed his family, and they took everything from you. They put you in that prison camp, and every single day, every single minute, you didn't know if it was your turn to go into the chamber. Every single day, minute by minute, you're living with that. And so what Viktor Frankl figured out, he said, they can take everything from you. You're standing outside, you're naked, it's cold, you haven't eaten in days, no dignity, nothing. They take everything from you except one thing. He figured, you know what? There's one thing you can't take from me. And what that is his attitude. I have to give that up. I have to relinquish it. And he chose not to. And so it goes back to what we were talking about for the vets. They lost purpose. He created purpose while he was there. And the purpose he created was, someone has to tell this story. And I have to live and make it to go tell this story. So you want to change your life? Change your story. It's that simple.
Oh man, love that. What a great conversation today, Dave. Thank you so much. I think you've really hit the ball, a home run with us, and what it means really to have a rite of passage and it doesn't matter whether we're battling addiction or in the boardroom, or really you're talking about being able to be masters of our lives. And so if men and women, whoever's listening to the podcast today, if anybody wanted to reach out and get a hold of you and participate in your programs, support you with the work that you're doing with vets, what would be the best way for them to do that?
Just go to our website. It's the best place. It's firewalkadventures.com. And they'll also see there, we have an academy. Once a year, I bring people in that want to be trained, right? So sometimes corporations send me people through HR, or maybe a business owner, entrepreneur, trainers, coaches, whatever, a whole different variety. We just did our academy here a couple of weeks ago. We had 11 people from around the world. And so the next academy is in October of 2024. And we only allow 18 people at that event. Then we cut it off. That's it. And we're already where I think right now we're about 35% sold out. And we haven't even gotten into next year yet. So everything's there. If you want to get a hold of me, you want to talk to me, you say, hey, Dave, you know what? We'd love to get involved with the vets. We'd love to get involved with the first responders, the kids that are being bullied, moms, all of that. Yeah, just get a hold of us. Let's get on a discovery call and let's see what we can work out.
Oh, I love it. I'll make sure all that information, as well as any social media that you might be on, make sure that people have opportunity to reach out to you. Once again, thanks so much, Dave. Love the conversation today. Thank you so much for everything that you're doing for all of us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, my friend. Let's do it again sometime.
Thank you for listening to the Revolutionary Man podcast. Are you ready to own your destiny? To become more the man you are destined to be? Join the brotherhood that is The Awakened Man at theawakenedman.net. and start forging a new destiny today.